Next learning goal for Unit 5 is I will be able to recognize and draw a net for three-dimensional figures. So our key word here is net. When we talk about net, we're not talking about this kind of net. We're not talking about a bug-catching net. We are talking a net of a three-dimensional figure. A net is a plane figure, and by plane it means flat. When we talked about three-dimensional figures, we said they have length, width, and height. When we talk about a plane figure, it does not have width. It just has length and height. So a net is a plane figure, which when folded gives us a solid or a three-dimensional figure. So if we look at this three-dimensional figure, the first thing you want to ask yourself is how many faces does the cube have? And like we talked about the last lesson, there's some faces that are visible, and we have 3 faces that are visible. And there are some faces that we cannot see, and so if we know there's opposite of because of the cube, we know that this has 6 faces. Okay? When you unfold the cube, you will be able to see its 6 sides in a flat form. So it'd be kind of like taking a scissors and cutting along these lines and unfolding it. When you unfold the cube, you can see that by cutting along the up and down lines and folding them flat and opening them up, this is what it would look like. This right here is called the net. So this shape here is called a net. Okay? Let's take a closer look of the net. When you take a closer look at the net, you can also see the labels and the parts of the cube. This right here would be the back of the cube. This here is the left side. This is the bottom or the base of the cube, the right side of the cube, and the front of the cube. And that would be the top of the cube. So let's take a look at this rectangular prism. So if you unfolded this rectangular prism, how many pieces would it have? Well, it would have as many pieces as it does faces. So on this one, there's 1, 2, 3 visible, and there's 2 behind and 1 underneath. So it has 6 faces. Now, the thing to be looking at that would be different than a cube. A cube is called a cube because it's a regular polygon and it's made up of squares. In a rectangular prism, our sides are not necessarily made up of squares. So what shapes would each of the pieces be? Well, you can look at the name, rectangular prism. The word rectangular would tell you that. Otherwise, just looking at the shape itself, you would be able to see. In this case, it's made up of rectangles, hence the name rectangular prism. Let's take a look at the net of this prism. So this would be as if you cut along the edges and opened it up. You can see that we have our back, the bottom, the left side, the right side, the front, and the top. So let's take a look at what it looks like when you actually are folding or unfolding a net. So this is the example of a net of a rectangular prism. Now this one's a little bit of a special rectangular prism because it's looking at it as a box, like a box that you would put a shirt in. I'm going to play this and I want you to watch how the net creates the three-dimensional figure. Now right now it's a plane figure because it's flat, but when folded on its edges, our plane figure becomes a three-dimensional figure. It becomes a rectangular prism. It can also be unfolded. And when you unfold it, you have the net. Okay? Let's get our next shape. In this case shape, we have a pyramid. All right? Remember, a pyramid has a bottom or a base that is the shape of a polygon, and there isn't a top part. It comes together in a point. You can also make a net out of this shape. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is how many pieces would the pyramid make if it was unfolded? So you want to count how many faces. The visible number of faces here are 1, 2, 3. We know it has a base, so that would make it a fourth. I guess the question would be what shape the back is. I'm going to assume that it is a rectangular pyramid, which would give us one face on the back. So we would have 5 faces. So when we unfold our net, we should have 5 faces. Next question is the shape of each face. Oops, sorry. Oops, wrong way. Well, this would be a little bit different. We have two different shapes in this one. We can see that our bottom is rectangular shaped, but our sides, because we don't have a top, are triangular shaped. So we're going to have 4 triangles, one for each face, and 1 rectangle or a square, depending on what the base is, for the bottom. This net would look like this. It would leave your base intact and slice on the sides. And we have our bottom, back, left side, front, and right side. All right, so let's look at the net being formed here of our rectangular pyramid. And on this one you can see that because they're mimicking boxes, we have these red pieces that are additional folds. So when you make a regular net, you wouldn't have those pieces there. All right, so let's say you take a cube and you're going to use the shapes from the bottom. What shapes would you use to create the net for the cube? Go ahead and draw it in your notes book and then come back and check. All right, let's check it out. So for a cube, you would have this shape. Now, there are more than one shape that you can make from the cube. And in class, there's an activity I'll have you do to practice that. But for this case, this would be one of the types of nets you can make. All right, what about a rectangular prism? Use the shapes on the bottom to create a net of a rectangular prism. Pause the video, draw it out on paper, and then we'll check it. Okay? In this case, we would have our bottom, unfold the top 2, and have the other sides. All right, let's look at our triangular prism here. So I want you to take a look at this one, take a look at the shape of the sides and how many faces. I want you to pause the video and use the shapes from below and draw the net for this shape. Okay, let's take a look. And here, you notice that our 3 sides are rectangles with only the ends being triangles. Okay, this time the square pyramid. Once again, use the shapes from below. Keep in mind that the name is a square pyramid. That gives you a hint as to what the base shape would be. All right, take a peek. And there we have our base with our 4 sides folded down. All right, now we have a triangular prism. So once again, take the shapes, pay attention to that name. And here, make sure that you have a triangle in the middle for the bottom. It is a triangular pyramid. That means the base is in the shape of a triangle. All right, that's kind of the basics on nets. Nets are the plane figures of a 3-dimensional shape. I'll have a little bit more hands-on activity for you to do in class.